I mean, I'm a big believer in Facebook and a big fan, but that I don't think I don't think you can take for granted that any social network is going to be here 10 years from now.
So you're a big fan, really?
Facebook?
Yeah, I mean,
I love Facebook.
among the techies of that's such a unusual view. I mean, I hear people talking about how they're they're getting this closed web, the privacy issues,
They make great product.
I think they do too.
I mean, it's an elegant, beautiful product, and what else matters? I mean, there's all those other questions, but I. Yeah,
no, I agree.
And to be honest, maybe I don't trust people in our industry who don't use Facebook.
Who don't use it at all, or don't use it?
I know you don't. Do you use Facebook?
I have an account. I use it a little bit.
I don't trust people who don't use Facebook.
Why?
Because it's the soul of how hundreds of millions of people are really experiencing their first time of participating online. I mean, I think about my wife.
It's the first time they're sort of contributing or something or creating content.
Yeah, that whole pyramid of lurkers to participants has always been a tiny percentage of lurkers, and people have just sort of presumed, well, that's the way it's always going to be. The fact that my brother Gary is actually commenting on stuff on the fact that my wife is
I log in every day. All right, but my problem is I let it get to be not just my real friends, and so it's I need to go and authenticate my network or whatever you want to say, start it over or something, because it became all these some dude I met at a conference or something, and it's not like.
See, yeah, I'm interested in the stuff that's.
I also, as you know, I love Twitter. I use Twitter constantly, so that's my.
As do I. Yeah. I guess the point is you can't really say that you're in this game for the world-changing parts of it if you can't muster up some respect for the things that are actually changing the world right now, in our industry. So I mean. And of course you can be, critical.
It's one thing to respect them. It's another thing to worry about. For example, the fact that we're entering an era now where I think two very critical pieces of what I would consider infrastructure, the social graph, and then sort of micro messaging on Twitter, are owned by a single company. And I think if the analogy I use, if in 1993 we had a company called Email, instead of having SMTP and open protocol, I think there would have been less innovation, less total wealth creation, less usable networks. I think there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, I'm not saying this because I'm some sort of utopian populist or something. I just think it might actually be bad for innovation to have it be so centrally controlled.
Well, and that I'm a big believer in open systems, and that's so I can concurrently say that I don't think Facebook will sustain their dominance for a long time. I mean,
that's my only issue with them. I mean, and I use Twitter all the time. But my issue is I don't think it's just a good idea. I think it's a bad way to run infrastructure. It's a bad way to create the greatest wealth. I mean, I just I don't know. So that's just as a sort of someone with a vested interest in the internet, I guess I worry about those things. But maybe you're right. Hopefully,
I think the internet will prevail.
Yeah.
And actually, it's Jason Kotke has me on record as being the first person to claim during the first F8 that Facebook is the new AOL. I just think that they'll have a really good reign for a while. But yeah, it's a.
But AOL, which were here and they're still doing well, but not nearly the extent that they were, and that happened because not because someone else came along with a better AOL, but because they became kind of irrelevant, right? Because the web came along and you had Google, and you didn't need the training wheels to get you online, and you had a different broadband provider, and
Well, so the thing that's interesting is that all the old school technology people talk about the singularity for when when AI comes into place, or when machines are smart, and the more interesting thing, the real singularity is when everyone on the planet has a phone and is connected, and is on Facebook or however that social networking happens. And what gets unleashed when that happens is we can't even imagine it yet. And and I mean the collective action, the collective power, the idea that we can buy and sell from each other, rent to each other, turn to each other, entertain each other, all the stuff that's happened, it's starting to happen, and the renting each other's cars.
Just getting rid of all of the intermediaries and all of these sort of whatever.
Yeah, and so the kind of irrelevancy, the no one replaced AOL, it kind of comes out of this idea that that you got, more phones than toilets right now on the planet, and that they're going to get cheaper, and once you light it up with everyone being on a network that is accessible, whether that's Facebook or however it plays out, that's going to turn everything upside down.
So yeah, I mean, you have sort of two sides to this debate, right? You have kind of I don't know, I'd call it the old media people or something who are like complaining, okay, journalism is dying, people's attention spans are, down to 140K. Like Bill Keller is like, oh God, these people are getting so dumb. Of course, he has no idea what Twitter is or how to use it. But, and then you have, I don't know, some other people saying, oh, we've lost our memory because we rely on Google too much. I don't know, there's some book about this by some academic. And then you have people like, you can tell I have a lot of respect for those people. So who's that guy? He's like this perennially curmudgeonly guy.
Nicholas Carr.
Yeah, exactly. One of these like professional curmudgeons or something.
Yeah.
But and then there's people like us who think that are generally much more optimistic about the impact of these things. And I just look at it like, for example, I think I compare reading Fred Wilson's blog about venture capital to reading the Wall Street Journal's description of venture capital. And as somebody who's sort of in the industry, like the Wall Street Journal gets, like I could go with a red pen, half of it's wrong, half of it's ridiculous, meanwhile getting it directly from the source. And that's called amateur. Like to me, that's like a vastly more interesting thing to read. And of course, that's just one of many, many examples.
I'm in the business of using the internet to get people off the internet, because there is something about face-to-face. And so I think, this kind of, the lines between online and offline will blur, but and there will always be a power to getting away from the screen. And I could blah 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 about the fears I've got of us. The screens are only going to get more interesting. If you think now it's hard to avoid looking at your phone during a meal at a restaurant, if you think it's hard now to resist the phone or on your screen 24/7, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like it's only the stuff on that screen is only going to get more interesting, more addictive, more awesome, more better. So it's really freaking scary, that we're going to be that we're not going to extract ourselves from it. That said, I'm a believer that that the connection, that when people are connected, everything changes, that we're about to go through a period in history where things will change more in the next 10, 20, 30 years than they ever have in human history. And that's solely because people can collaborate and communicate and coordinate and other things that start with C. And I hate to use those words as just these cliches, but it's real. I mean, this is like what Airbnb will have, we'll have more. Put it this way: the Hiltons will be will slowly. I'm saying over the course of a generation, will hollow out, and people will be renting their cars to each other, and all the stuff that TechCrunch reports on. What I see from my perspective that is pretty unique is that we do this simple little thing of getting a bunch of strangers who have some common interest together. We dump them into a Starbucks, and we see what happens. And what happens is, they start companies together. They babysit each other's kids.